Welcome to the bottom 15 movies of 2024, the video that makes me and many other movie buffs resort to alcohol. I don't have any with me, but what I do have is a heaping helping of shitty movies that came out last year. But before I get into the bottom 15, I of course have a bunch of honorable mentions, as this is possibly the worst year of cinema we've ever gotten. And I probably say that every year, but I really mean it this time. Lord of the Rings, The War for the Rohirrim, My Spy the Eternal City, Moana 2, Kung Fu Panda 4, Atlas, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and all three parts of Crisis on Infinite Earths were not quite bad enough to make the list. And now we have two unmentionables, which are The Apprentice and The Order, as these movies were so bad that I couldn't even watch them. Now, normally with bad movies, it can be pretty painful to get through, but it's mainly like getting lightly jabbed in the back with a needle. These movies would have been more akin to sitting on a cactus buck naked. So with that all out of the way, let's get into the bottom 15 films of 2024. This is this year's Across the Spider-Verse and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, a god-awful animated movie that all the crybaby shills defended. But that doesn't change the fact this movie's hot garbage. All the voice actors are horribly miscast, especially Brian Tyree Henry and Keegan-Michael Key. The characters are annoying, Bumblebee especially. The dialogue is Batman and Robin tiers level bad, and nothing is really interesting in the film until maybe the last 20 minutes, and even then, it's just an okay 20 minutes. Yeah, like I said, this is just Across the Spider-Verse again, where I don't see the appeal of this piece of shit, and I never will. The quote-unquote live-action Lion King was one of the most reviled movies of the past 15 years. So why not make a fucking prequel to it that absolutely nobody asked for? Hell, had this been done in the 2D art style and been a prequel to the original animated film, people still wouldn't have given a crap about Mufasa's backstory. They tamper with the lore by making Mufasa an adopted brother of Scar. Scar becomes evil because his brother is dating the girl he likes. The villain's song is fucking weird, and the rest of the songs aren't much better. The animation doesn't look as good as it did in the original, and while they tried more with the facial animations, it seemed to screw with everything else. And Barry Jenkins' direction is, how should I put this, absolutely fucking god-awful. This is a terrible prequel, and while it's not quite as bad as the 2019 film because it at least tried to tell an original story, the original story it tried to tell was garbage. For some reason, people were giving this movie a good review because it was better than the first movie. Being better than a steaming pile of shit, and only by this much, might I add, does not make your movie good. Hell, that would make Mufasa the Lion King a freaking masterpiece if that were the case. This is just as bad as the first one. It at least brings a little bit of the lore in with more characters like Tigger and Owl, but it still just completely throws out the actual backstory and tries to make some weird Five Nights at Freddy's knockoff where Christopher Robin's brother is Pooh, which makes absolutely no goddamn sense in at all. And it does some shameless teasing for the rest of this god-awful franchise that starts pretty soon, because I'm seeing Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare very, very soon. I can't believe this is an actual fucking franchise. Is there some unwritten rule that each Hellboy movie has to be even worse than the last? The 2019 film was pretty bad, but at least it had a little bit of entertainment value to it. This does not. The acting is pretty bland, the writing is very uninteresting, and it is just so boring all the way around, and the special effects are shit. I know everybody wants a Hellboy 3 with Ron Perlman and Guillermo del Toro, but I think they need to let that go, and we just need another good Hellboy movie. And if you can't make a good Hellboy movie, don't even bother fucking trying. Much like Peter Pan and Wendy from last year, this movie was doomed from the first trailer, as a lot of backlash came in about this movie's existence at all. Not just because it was a remake of a movie that doesn't really need one, but because of the actor's tragic death on set of the original film, they saw this as disrespectful. Ignoring the fact that there were already several sequels to the original. This is the movie everybody wants to flip their shit over, but don't get me wrong, this is a fucking awful movie, and the backlash was definitely deserved. The acting is god-awful, even from talented actors. The special effects are laughably awful. The story is stupid as hell. And just nothing comes together with this film. There is absolutely no reason for this to exist. And they turned The Crow into basically another just emo teenager, even though he's not a teenager. But he definitely just kind of acts like an emo psychopath throughout the entire film, and it's not interesting in the slightest. I've seen some people, including Jeremy Jahns, put this as their number one, but I couldn't even give enough of a shit about this movie to put it that high. When the trailer for this came out, I swore this was going to be a top 5 for this list. And it barely cracked the top 10, and here's why. Not only is the movie not nearly as woke as the trailers made it out to be, though it still has plenty of those elements to it, it's just flat out dull. I had no interest at all throughout the entire running time. Nobody is well cast in this movie, by the way. Kevin Hart especially is out of his element here, and the other two actresses are way too old to be playing these roles of characters who are in their 20s and 30s, and these two actors are in their 50s at best. I don't understand why anybody thought this was going to work. Video game adaptations just don't usually work in general unless you're the Super Mario Brothers animated movie, apparently. But this one took the Uncharted route of not even giving half a shit. If you don't know, my review of Madame Web is the longest video I've ever made, clocking in at over 49 minutes. I had that much to say about this film, so I'll try to condense it into about 30 seconds. The acting is the only saving graces in this film, as everybody is trying their ass off to make this shitty script work, but they fail. Like I said, the script is one of the worst Marvel scripts I've ever seen put to film. The action sequences are god-awful, the editing is atrocious, the villain is lame, and just the characters have no depth to them whatsoever. They're all the most generic Peter Parker ripoffs you could make for this film, and this is probably the film that killed the Sony Spider-Man universe. It wasn't Kraven the Hunter, wasn't Venom 3, wasn't Morbius, it was this trash fire. A movie nobody wanted, a movie nobody asked for, and we got anyway. That's modern Disney for you. This is another case of just nothing works in this film. The acting isn't very good, the singing is heavily auto-tuned to the point of insanity, even worse than the third film. The songs are not very good, and they even tried to throw in some remixes of older songs from the trilogy just for some nostalgia kicks that I don't really have because I've never liked this franchise. And they make a big deal about how there's consequences to time travel, and then they just don't do the consequences to time travel. Also, this franchise has been telling us that all of these villains are supposed to be misunderstood or some such bullshit, yet that's completely thrown out the window for the sake of the plot of this film, where it's shown that the villains were pretty much dickheads from the beginning. God damn, please don't make a fifth one. I saw this for the first time just a few days ago. And let me just say, I am so glad I skipped this in the theater. This story is one of the most retarded things I've ever seen put to film, including, you know what? I can suspend my disbelief for a movie about ghosts quite a bit. But once you bring in firebending, you've lost me. The actors all try their hardest, but the main character is very unlikable, and I say the main character is the girl, I can't be bothered to remember her name. The side characters are obnoxious, the actual Ghostbusters people like are not in the film enough and make some pretty stupid decisions throughout the film, and the special effects are pretty mediocre for this franchise. You might be looking at the next episode of Cinematic Disasters right here. When I heard a Megamind sequel was finally in development, I actually got really excited. That was mistake number 1 I made on the year. This is nothing but streaming slop. It's something cheap and quickly thrown together that Peacock can throw on their streaming service to convince some idiots to get a subscription. I was not fooled, I saw it with somebody else's subscription, so suck on that, Peacock. This is disrespectful to the original in every conceivable way. The animation is some of the cheapest I've ever seen. The characters are annoying, and they turn Megamind, who's supposed to be the smartest person in the universe, into a bumbling fucking moron. Someone who literally can't even work a toaster without Minion. Once again, like I said in my review, I'm not making that up. And no, I still haven't watched the show. Do you like farming? Do you like 2 hours of padding to get this thing to a 2-hour runtime despite having absolutely no story? Then this is the movie for you. On the other hand, if you actually have some semblance of taste, you'll probably have plenty of issues with this film. This, again, is mostly just 2 hours of farming and watching these people fuck around until they get to the final battle, which is absolutely atrocious, that relies way too heavily on Zack Snyder's slow-mo that's not nearly as cool as he thinks it is, to the point where his supposed, 6-film plan for this franchise went out the window almost immediately, and for good fucking reason. Zack Snyder just needs to go away from Hollywood forever. If you liked the first Joker film, you probably will hate the shit out of this movie. If you didn't like the first Joker film, like I really didn't, you'll still fucking hate this film because it's god-awful. This is one of the worst put-together musicals I've ever seen in my life. Not only is there virtually no story to this film, as basically nothing is accomplished, the musical sequences, which are supposed to help progress the story, grind the movie to a screeching halt anytime somebody sings. And I counted, it takes up about a third of the runtime with all the songs. And again, like I said, the story, basically, it's all just the court case of his murders, and then he's killed at the end. So that makes both of these films just 100% pointless, because we're basically following somebody who's not even the actual Joker, because the actual Joker, I guess, isn't shown up until the end of this movie. Fuck me, what the hell was the point of this? More woke slop brought to you by the garbage heap known as Netflix. The initial idea for this film is kind of interesting at first, but then the movie just goes off a cliff, much like the main character, very, very fast. Not only is the first third incredibly boring and accomplishes very little, but once she actually ends up in the cave, I guess you can call it, with the dragon, it just goes on repeat for the next hour. And then the final battle is one of the stupidest things ever, with someone who has never held a sword all of a sudden turning into fucking Wonder Woman and delivering some very horrible dialogue throughout the entire film, especially at the end with one of the stupidest fucking endings I've ever seen to a fantasy film. Netflix is so bad. Man, I want the Electric State to be good because it's got the writers and directors of Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, but it's Netflix. It's probably still gonna suck. The award for the most racist film on the list goes to the American Society of Magical Negroes. Do I even need to explain why? This was one of the more infamous films that came out this year, where it's literally about magical black people who go around like guardian angels to make white people's lives easier. I could leave it at that and you have all you need to know, but I'll continue anyway. The acting's pretty bad, the story is fucking stupid as hell, and the special effects are shit. Apparently some people went into this hoping it would be some decent, almost like spoof comedy, but that's not what they got. Instead, they got a movie about hating white people for an hour and a half. I saw this for free at a pre-screening, and I walked out after half an hour. That tells you all you need to know. The reason this is number 1 is because this barely counts as a movie. It doesn't have a story, nothing is explained, and the ending is just non-existent. If you saw my review, you know why. I'm not going to get into it here. None of the acting is good. All the characters are obnoxious and kind of assholes to each other, so I don't know why I should care when any of them get killed. For some reason, Steamboat Willie, who's just a guy in a suit, it's not even actually Steamboat Willie in the film, can teleport for some reason, and I don't mean the Michael Myers effect, I mean he literally teleports on screen. You figure that one out because it's never explained. And it says possibly one of the worst endings in movie history. And we're getting more of these steaming piles of shit this year, so be on the lookout for those. Finally, I'm fucking done with 2024. Holy shit, this was a bad year. Not just in movies, but to be perfectly honest, this was kind of a bad year. Just all around, and I really need 2025 to be better. So why don't we look ahead at some upcoming movies that I'm looking forward to and not so looking forward to, though I will have full videos on those coming out soon. What do we got? Okay, that's good. Okay, there we go. That looks like butt cheeks. That looks awful. What are you fucking doing? Okay, so, bit down the middle. Could be worse, right? Oh, fucking God.